Welcome to Behol Lashon's first Nowruz Kabbalat Shabbat celebration. My name is Marcella White Campbell, and I'm the Executive Director of Behol Lashon. For over 20 years, Behol Lashon has dedicated itself to celebrating the ethnic and racial diversity of the Jewish people. We are thankful that today our vision of a welcoming and open Jewish community is shared by more and more people. Last June, we organized an online Kabbalat Shabbat celebration in honor of Juneteenth. What was meant as a one-time event became an entire series. Each month, Behol Lashon celebrates another Jewish community and identity, showcasing our differences as well as what unites us. Last month, we celebrated with the stories and contributions of Asian American Jews at our Lunar New Year Kabbalat Shabbat. Unfortunately, the past year has seen a rise in discrimination and violence against Asian Americans, culminating in Tuesday's senseless attacks in Atlanta. We hold our Asian Jewish family during this painful time. We see you, we hear you, and we support you. You are an integral part of our Jewish community. Behol Lashon celebrates the diversity of Jewish identity and experience, which is enriched by the stories and contributions of Asian Jews. We have gathered articles by and about Asian Jews from our publication, Jewish And, which you can find on our website, globaljews.org. Today, we celebrate another new year, Nowruz, the Persian New Year. This event is a celebration of one of the world's oldest Jewish communities. We are thrilled to have an extraordinary roster of presenters for today's Kabbalat Shabbat. We want to thank our co-host, Marlene Meyerson, JCC of Manhattan, for supporting this event. Last but not least, Behol Lashon is a not-for-profit, and we rely on your support to continue our work. Please consider supporting Jewish diversity at www.globaljews.org/donate. And now I pass the virtual microphone to today's Master of Ceremonies, Marjan Greenblatt.
Welcome. Salam, hello, and Shabbat Shalom. My name is Marjan Greenblatt, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all to my home, where I'm getting ready to celebrate the Persian holiday of Nowruz and the Jewish holiday of Shabbat. Today marks the last Shabbat of 14th century in the Iranian calendar, as in less than 24 hours, as we mark the spring equinox, a new century will begin in the Persian calendar. But Nowruz is a holiday that dates back even before that, to 2,700 years ago, almost at the same time when Jewish history began its presence in Iran and gained noticeable mentions in the biblical books such as the book of Isaiah, Daniel, Ezra, and Nehemiah. In the past 2,700 years, Jews have had a consistent presence in Iran, and throughout our history, we have had lots of ups and downs. We were greeted and protected by compassionate and generous kings such as Cyrus the Great, Darius, and Xerxes. But also, we experienced isolation and our fair share of discrimination in different junctures of our presence. But in good times and in bad times, we maintained our dual cultures as Iranians and as Jews, even creating hybrid identities as evidenced in our Persian and Judeo-Persian dialects. Even as we celebrate Nowruz, we add our own Jewish flavor to this experience. And the secular holiday of Nowruz allows for Iranians of all religious backgrounds to celebrate this holiday and to make that their own. For example, at my half-seen table today, which is the symbolic table resembling perhaps like a Seder table, resembling renewal, rejuvenation, and prosperity. I have a Siddur on my table, which represents my Jewish identity as well as everything that represents my Iranian identity. The half-seen table is a traditional table that all Iranians prepare before the Nowruz celebrations. This table represents at least 7 items that begin with the letter S, which represent, again, prosperity, good luck, and rejuvenation for all of us. Not much remains of our 2,700-year-old Jewish tradition in Iran. The community that was once as robust as 70,000 across the country of Iran is now limited to less than 10,000. Many of Iranian Jews left the country at the onset of the Islamic Revolution in 1979. And many of us Jews left the country and became immigrants in different parts of the world and taking yet another layer of identity. But no matter where we went, we maintained our Persian and our Jewish traditions. And women have played a significant role in maintaining the Iranian and Jewish households, maintaining the traditions, the music, the food, and the language for their families. Today, we will experience a flavor of Iranian stories, what it means to be an Iranian Jew, the history of Iranian Jews, as well as a flavor of what it is like to experience a Persian Shabbat dinner. So with that, I would like to pass the baton to Dr. Galeet Dardashti, who will talk to us a little bit about her family's history and also the history of Persian Jews and Persian Jewish music. Dr. Dardashti is an anthropologist, she is a writer, she is a musician, and she's an ardent preserver and protector of the Iranian and Jewish cultures. Dr. Dardashti, it is my pleasure to pass the baton to you.
Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. Very sweet of you. First of all, Nowruz Mubarak. Happy Persian New Year. And I'm very excited to be here today, not only to celebrate Nowruz, but also Persian Jewish women. Having this women-led panel seems appropriate since we just celebrated Purim, a holiday that valorizes the strength of powerful Persian women, Jewish and non-Jewish, both with Esther and Vashti. And like the women on this panel, I am following in the footsteps of many strong women, including my great-aunt Tova in Tehran, who notably wore talit and tefillin when she prayed, and was an important sage to both men and women in her Tehran community. And my grandmother, Huri, who was born in Hamadan, also known as Shushan, just like Esther. And my grandmother took it upon herself to establish a Persian synagogue in Rishon LeZion called Beit Knesset Shushan Habira, Shushan the capital, which is still active in Israel today. So I'm very happy to help recognize Persian Jewish women's accomplishments. So I want to speak a little bit now about Persian Jewish music. As Marjan mentioned, Jews came to Iran in 586 BCE with the destruction of the First Temple, and we know that Jews have been integral to Persian music making for much of this history. One of the reasons is that 7th century Muslims conquered Persia, and because of some of the prohibitions under Islam, Muslims actually couldn't participate as musicians in some historical periods, depending upon the Islamic practices of that specific historical period. So who maintained the musical traditions? Jews, Christians, Zoroastrians were really responsible for many of these historical periods in Iran. Jews lived in Iran for years, mostly peacefully, but they faced discrimination depending upon who was in power. The best period for Jews was during the Pahlavi dynasty, which was 1925 to 1979, when restrictions against Jews were lifted. And this in part explains the rise of my grandfather, Younes Dardashti. And my grandfather, Younes, also known as Yonah, that was his Hebrew name, he was one of the most famous singers of Persian classical music in Iran in the 1950s and 1960s. He sang at the Shah's palace. He sang at concert halls throughout Iran. He sang, he had a weekly spot on the radio before there was television, and was really seen as one of the biggest masters of his time in the realm of Persian classical music. he was this really important singer in Iran. But also as a Jew, he would often lead his community in prayers, not as a cantor, since the occupation of being a cantor didn't exist in most of the Middle East. He would lead services sometimes. But even though that is what my grandfather sounded like, I didn't grow up familiar with Persian music at all. I came to performing Persian and other Middle Eastern Jewish music when I began my graduate work in anthropology and began studying some of the Middle Eastern music making in Israel. Since then, I've done many other musical projects where I attempt to breathe new life into traditional Middle Eastern Jewish music, including with my all-female group Divan and many solo projects. Several years ago, I decided that I wanted to try to connect with my grandfather, although he was no longer alive. My family actually had very few recordings of my grandfather singing in Hebrew at all. Most of the recordings were of him singing Persian classical music, since that's what he was known for. But we had this one recording of him singing slichot, which are these beautiful sacred poems that you sing before the Persian New Year. And in the Persian tradition, like many Middle Eastern traditions, you sing these pieces every single day, not just once, every single day. And in the Persian tradition, it's usually around 4 a.m. So we had this recording of my grandfather singing this really powerful music. And I was commissioned to create another solo project called Monajat, in which I reimagined the Persian slichot ritual with both the recordings of my grandfather and music that I composed along with it. Now, usually this is performed with an incredible group of musicians that I perform with, but I'm going to give you a sense of me just singing responsively with my grandfather. So I'm excited to say that I'm finally recording this album this year. So how does this relate to Nowruz? Well, as I was reflecting upon the Jewish New Year for a Persian Jewish project that I was thinking about the ways in which my grandfather seamlessly connected the Persian aspects of his identity with the non-Jewish. So for example, I titled the project Monajat because at the end of my grandfather's leading of Slichot, he would end with this piece entitled Monajat. This is a Persian poem attributed to the mystic Sufi poet Rumi, in which he encourages listeners to shake off their slumber and worship God. And this poem so perfectly fit with the theme of slichot that it seemed perfectly natural for my grandfather to bring it into his religious Jewish practice. So when I created my project, Monajat, years ago, I felt I had some artistic license. And the themes of the Persian New Year really resonated with me in thinking about the Jewish New Year. Because Nowruz offers all of the promise that the new season brings for renewal, for regrowth, rebirth. And I felt that all of those themes were what I wanted to highlight when we as Jews prepare ourselves for the high holidays. So I found a beautiful poem by one of the greatest Jewish medieval poets about spring. And I'm going to read it for you. So it's a poem by the 11th and 12th century poet Moses ibn Ezra, Moshe ibn Ezra, and it's called Wine Song for Spring. And these are the words. The cold season has slipped away like a shadow. Its rains are already gone, its chariots and its horsemen. Now the sun in its ordained circuit is at the sign of the ram, like a king reclining on his couch. The hills have adorned themselves with turbans of flowers, and the plain has robed itself in tunics of grass and herbs. It greets our nostrils with the incense hidden in its bosom all winter long. Give me the cup that will enthrone my joy and banish sorrow from my heart. So these are the words. This is a translation of the Hebrew words, and it seemed like a very Persian poem, actually, especially with the wine reference. So I connected the Jewish New Year to the Persian New Year. And if any of you are familiar with the very well-known Persian singer Vigen, I took a little bit of the chorus from his song Barun Barune into a little bit into this song that you're going to hear now. So this is my Jewish Nowruz song. I hope you enjoy it. It's a bit of Persian music, a little bit of jazz, and a little bit of my own thing. And spring is a very optimistic time because you can see the end of the dark winter, finally. And I hope that for all of us, that this Nowruz marks the end of a very dark time in all of our lives. So, here we go. And I'm playing actually a very un-Persian instrument, but it sounds good with Persian music. It's a mountain dulcimer that someone gave me, in case you were wondering. And this is the chorus. It goes, Zman hakor ketzel barach vegishmo kvar chalaf ufarashav verich bo. I don't know if you want to put up the words so that people can see them or not. You can just, you heard what the words are about. So that's the chorus that I just translated for you earlier. זמן הקור קצל ברח וגשמו כבר חלף ופרשה ורכבו זמן הקור קצל ברח וגשמו כבר חלף ופרשה ורכבו וחל השמש בראש Tale, alei, alei chok, bikufato, b'melech, al mesibo, manakol ketzel barach vegishmo, kvar chalaf ופרשה ורכבו, man hakor ketzel barach vegishmo, kvar chalaf ופרשה ורכבו. וכבשו את נחירנו כתורת הסתיו תמן תמן בחובו זמן הכל קצל ברח וגשמו כבר חלף ופרשה ורכבו זמן הכל קצל ברח וגשמו כבר חלף ופרשה ורכבו תנקוס אשר יסיר מטוסי ויסיר מלבבי מעצה בזמן הכל קצל ברח וגשמו כבר חלף ופרשה ורכבו זמן הכל קצל ברח וגשמו כבר חלף ופרשה ורכבו.
Thank you, Dr. Dardashti. That was absolutely beautiful, and it touches us in such a deep place in our souls of our ancestors' music and sounds. And I cannot thank you enough for what you do every day to preserve and present this music and these traditions for the generations to come. Thank you, Dr. Dardashti. And at this point, I'd like to introduce my friend, Josephine Mairzadeh, to talk to us a little bit about her own personal identity as an Iranian Jewish woman and what it is like to keep the stories and traditions alive. Josephine Mairzadeh is an artist, she is a writer, she's a political activist, and recently she was elected to the library board of the city of Great Neck. Josephine, it is my pleasure to introduce you and pass the virtual baton to you.
Good afternoon. As the first generation American child of Iranian Jewish refugees who fled to America during the Iranian Revolution, my family unwantedly bequeathed their material possessions to the new Iranian regime. Their only remaining valuables in America were their fleeting memories, 2,700-year-old Iranian heritage, and their uncompromising adherence to their faith. A Jewish faith that has been safeguarded through Esther, the Queen of Persia's brave act of valiance when saving her people. The Book of Esther, Megillat Esther, may not have been the greatest love story of the Persian Empire, but it was a story of leadership, selflessness, and commitment to the survival of the Jewish people. Queen Esther is not only acclaimed as being the savior of her Jewish brethren, but unknowingly, she was also the guardian to the forthcoming generations of Iranian Jewish communities in the diaspora. Having made her own life secondary to that of her people, her role was one of an architect of a meandering river made of rain and teardrops, ash vaberochai, that symbolized the destiny of the Jews of Iran. However, her blueprint was the conviction to her faith that determined the fate of an entire people. A faith that has been trickled down from mother to daughter, father to son, and has eventually pulled its way here into America. Upon our community's arrival in the United States, Esther's legacy has remained steadfast. Having come to a foreign land, our community's innate reflex was to define what it meant to be an Iranian Jew living under the roof of American land. Today, we recognize this period in our community's history as a crossroads now left behind us, with one very important lesson. When one day finishes, a new day begins. Now is the time to look back and celebrate our short history in America, while resurfacing imagery of renewal and growth. There is an old proverb that says, "They tried to bury us, but they didn't know we were seeds." Over time, Iranian Jews new to America replanted the seeds of our forebears, watered them in American soil, and nurtured what became a rooted tree through the leadership of our families, community leaders, and rabbis in synagogues. Consequently, I felt trapped to its dichotomy and magnetic draw, a game of seduction towards its positive forms of religious and cultural attraction and its repelling old-fashioned thought. I belong to a bridge generation. I, with my peers, am responsible for preserving our inherent legacy by capturing the history of Iranian Jews and practicing religious and cultural traditions like that of Nowruz. As we evolve, we are left to pick the flowers from the weeds and Golchin, the cultural implications and ideology we identify with best. After all, we are Iranian and American. So that we ensure the next generation of leaders can achieve even more than the last, we have to work together to create a roadmap to a network of visionary Jewish leaders based on our common Jewish history, heritage, and faith that has framed and defined Jewish civilizations for generations outside of our Iranian Jewish community. Supporting causes will be our compass as we guide our diverse communities in giving back. I want to leave off with a blessing my grandfather wished onto others in the Persian New Year. امیدوارم سال خوبی، خوشی، با موفقیت، صلح و صفا داشته باشید. I wish upon you all a year of happiness, success, peace, and prosperity. نوروزتون پیروز.
Thank you, Josephine. Your story is so relatable to me and to many others who are watching this program today. And I really thank you deeply for sharing this and for continuing to shed light on what it means to be an Iranian Jew. And as we know, it would not be a complete celebration, and it will not be a proper invitation to anyone's home without proper food to feed all of you with. But unfortunately, because of the pandemic, many of us have been denied of this joy of opening our doors and experiencing the food and the companionship of our guests. See, hospitality is also a big part of our Iranian tradition. And as Jews, we love to experience food and in abundance. But luckily for us, my friend Orly Elyashar, or as she is known, Chef Orly, has agreed to open up her home and show us what it is like to experience an Iranian Jewish Shabbat dinner. And I have to say, Chef Orly is a private chef. She's a food blogger, and she is a chef in high demand in private homes. And I hope that you will get to check out her blog and experience her amazing recipes. Orly, show us what you're serving tonight for dinner.
Shabbat Shalom. My name is Chef Orly, and today I'm going to be sharing with you guys some of the traditional Persian foods that you would see if you were to go into a Persian home on a Friday night. And these dishes are filled with so much love and tradition, and I look forward to sharing them with you, so come along. Here are some of our most traditional Persian Shabbat dinner foods. We are huge on stews, but one particular stew that's a must on our table on a Friday night is a dish called Ghormeh sabzi. It's a rich herb stew made traditionally with meat and fried herbs and kidney beans. We serve this with our infamous tahdig, which most of you guys know as Persian crispy rice. We serve this with our side of fresh herbs. Next, we have one of our most coveted and loved Persian Shabbat dishes. This dish is the epitome of our Shabbat for us. This is an ab gusht morg, which translates to chicken broth or a form of chicken soup. But it's truly not that simple. It's a perfect blend of chicken, onions, beans, spices, and sometimes potatoes and eggs cooked within the broth. We call this tochme morg shabbati, which literally translates to Shabbat eggs. These eggs can also be cooked in the slow cooker overnight with peels of red onions to enhance their color and give them a very distinct flavor. Next, we have the star of any Persian Shabbat dinner. This is gondi. It looks very similar to a matzo ball. It's actually not. It's ground chicken mixed with chickpea flour and incredible spices cooked in our ab gusht. If you go to a Persian home on a Friday night and they have served you this, just know that you are truly loved. Thank you so much for following along, and I hope you enjoyed the glimpse into my home and how we celebrate Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom, and have a beautiful week ahead.
Wow, that's amazing. I have to say, this art of creating the gondi is something that I still haven't mastered, but I will learn. Orly, you're an absolute inspiration, and hopefully we will be able to overcome this pandemic and once again, celebrate Shabbat and celebrate all the wonderful holidays together. See, Nowruz is a uniquely beautiful holiday, one especially for us Iranian Jews, because it falls right between Purim and it falls between Passover, two of the most important holidays for us. The Purim holiday, which is celebrated by Jews around the world, takes place in Iran, in the city of Hamadan. And we Iranian Jews take it very seriously. And just like all Iranians who pass out gifts for Nowruz, we also pass gifts for Purim, a holiday that does not necessarily include gift giving in the Western tradition, but instead of Hanukkah presents, we give gifts to each other during Purim. And I hope that, again, in the future, we will be able to celebrate all of these holidays in freedom and in health. And with that, I would like to pass it on one last time to Dr. Dardashti for final musical performance.
So I'm going to share with you a Pesach song that actually I didn't learn from my family, so that you can still feel like you can bring new traditions into your own Jewish lives that are not from your parents. I learned this from someone in Israel a long time ago, and since it's one that actually it's in the Haggadah, in almost every Haggadah, Adir Bimlucha, also known as Kilo Na'eh. And so I'll share this melody with you, since I learned it as well just about 10 years ago or so. And you could maybe, if you have this, Rabbi Ruth, if you want to share the Kilo Na'eh words for everybody so they could sing along, that would be great. And it goes like this. The words are in the PDF that was sent to you, or that's in the chat. אדיר במלוכה, בחור קהלך, גדודיו יאמרו לו, לך או לך, לך כי לך, לך לך, לך אדוני הממלכה. כי לא נאה, כי לא יאה, כי לא יאה, כי לא יאה. דגול במלוכה, הדור קהלך, ותיקיו יאמרו לו, לך ולך, לך כי לך, לך לך, לך אדוני הממלכה. זכאי במלוכה, חסיב קהלך, תפרסיו יאמרו לו, לך ולך, לך כי לך, לך לך, לך אדוני הממלכה. מושל במלוכה, נורא קהלך, זביביו יאמרו לו, לך ולך, לך כי לך, לך לך, לך אדוני הממלכה. קדוש במלוכה, רחום קהלך, שנניו יאמרו לו, לך ולך, לך כי לך, לך לך, לך אדוני הממלכה. One more verse. תקיף במלוכה, תומך קהלך, תמימיו יאמרו לו, לך ולך, לך כי לך, לך לך, לך אדוני הממלכה.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Dardashti. Thank you, Josephine, and thank you, Orly Elyashar, for all of your presentations. And most of all, I want to thank our hosts today, Marcella, for coming up with this idea and presenting our traditions to the broader audiences of Bihor Lashon. I hope that we will learn from each other, and I hope that we will grow with each other. Shabbat Shalom, Happy New Year, Nowruz Shoma Piruz.
כי אשמר השבת אל ישמרני אותי לעולמי עד בינו וביני. כי אשמר השבת אל ישמרני אותי לעולמי עד בינו וביני. עצור מצוחפת הסוד דרכים, גם מלדבר בו דברי מלכים, דברי סחוראות, דברי צרכים, אגה בתורת תל ותחכמני. כי ישמר השבת אל ישמרני אותי לעולמי עד בינו וביני. כי ישמר השבת אל ישמרני אותי לעולמי עד בינו וביני. באמצע תמיד נופש לנפשי, הנה לדור ראשון נתן קדושי. מופת בית לחם משנה בשישי, ככה בכל שישי יכפיל מזוני. כי ישמר השבת אל ישמרני אותי לעולמי עד בינו וביני. כי ישמר השבת אל ישמרני אותי לעולמי עד בינו וביני. היום מכובד הוא יום תענוגים, לחם ויין טוב, בשר ודגים, מתאבלים בו הם עוסקים, כי יום שמחות הוא ושמחתני. כי ישמר השבת אל ישמרני אותי לעולמי עד בינו וביני. כי ישמר השבת אל ישמרני אותי לעולמי עד בינו וביני. כי ישמר השבת אל ישמרני אותי לעולמי עד בינו וביני. כי ישמר השבת אל ישמרני Shabbat Shalom.